If you are white and live in the United States, you're probably a racist. I am. Most people don't want to be racist, but science has proven that most white people have an implicit bias against people of color. In fact, since you were a very young white person, you were fed negative stereotypes. Good guys wear white hats, bad guys wear black hats, and on and on. That's why implicit racial bias is built into our society. That's why unarmed black men are shot by police more often than unarmed white men. It's why the white guy gets the job over a black person with the same qualifications. Even if you say, I voted for Obama, or I have lots of black friends, yep, you're probably still racist, because your subconscious has trained you to be that way. And if you're asking yourself the question, am I a racist? You probably are. And if you say, I'm not a racist, you most certainly are.
Hello guys, welcome once again to the channel. I hope wherever you're watching, you're having a great time. Now, over the years, we have had many instances where American government has been developing policies to ensure that black people are not well represented in the society. Black people don't get an equal opportunity with their white counterparts in achieving their upward mobility. And this is an issue that has been talked about in many quarters. In recent years, we have also seen an increase in white people coming out to call out the American government and their white counterparts who believe that whiteness should accord them some level of privilege over the black Americans. And this is an issue that has also been widely seen in recent years. People like Tim Wise, people like George White have given their time and life to be the great champions of anti-racism in America. They have delivered numerous teachings about what white America is and how the current governance system in America has been impoverishing black people. This is quite an interesting topic because very many white people are coming out and talking about how they realized that they live in a racist system, that they needed to be awakened from the slumber of racism and get to know that it doesn't take the skin tone of somebody to make them be liked by you or be hated by you. Many of those who are going to speak in this clip are people who have confessed that at some point in their lives, they were racist. And after having learned the truth, they have decided to call out the American system and how whites have always been taught to be racist. Let's watch this clip, come back, and I'll share my thoughts in the end.
So I was raised to be racist. My grandparents used the hard R. They called the store down the road the hard R store. They were probably some of the most racist people and let me know that if I ever brought somebody home that wasn't a part of my race, that I would be disowned. And I must say, I definitely disappointed them being this beautiful lesbian who married a Filipino woman. This is truly just to show you that even though you were raised in a household that was racist, homophobic, bigoted, you don't have to be that way. I grew up thinking that me being gay was one of the worst things. I remember sitting there and just being like, please, God, let me just like a guy. Let me just like a boy. I don't want my family to hate me. I don't want them to disown me. I remember my mom telling me that if her kid ever came home and said that they were gay, that she was going to disown them as well. So, I mean, I grew up in a very, very strong household of, you're going to do what I say and you can't be your own individual person. Look, you don't have to be your family. Just because you were raised that way doesn't mean that you can't grow. This day and age, we have so much knowledge out there to prove that these thoughts that they have is absolutely ridiculous. So be a good person. Love people. Love people. Okay? Just be good.
I am, guys, for the first 35 years of my life or so, I was incredibly prejudiced towards a lot of people. I did not have empathy for other human beings that were not just like me. It was taught to me. I was brought up around it. I feel terrible about it. And I've been doing everything I can since I really, truly became aware of how awful I was to turn it around and be a better human being. So I appreciate you guys being here. I appreciate you guys understanding.
You say that all whites are racist. Can you expound on that, please?
Any white person who was born, raised, and schooled in the United States of America, if you aren't a racist, you're a miracle. Either that or you decided to educate yourself. Because education in this country is about white is right, brown's all right, black's got to stand back. Yellow's mellow, but whites, we educate in a way that says that white males have done all the adventures, have made all the adventures, have done all the discovering, have made all, everything that is good and has been accomplished according to social studies, which is actually anti-social studies, by white males. It's a lie. But we do that in order to maintain the myth of white superiority.
I've been asked probably well over 1,000 times in the comments and messages why I chose to confront my own racism and my prejudice ideology. So I thought I'd just have an honest conversation with you and break it down over a few parts and let you see into the mind of someone like me, the way I grew up and the man I'm becoming. Now, here's the crazy thing. I've only ever known one racist in my life for sure, and that's me, because I can't speak into the hearts and minds of another human being and what they think and feel. That's not fair, and that's prejudicial of me. So I'm the only one I've ever known, so I feel I can speak with authority about this. I'm not calling out other people who are. This is simply about my evolution and the things I confronted and some of the difficulties and some of the beautiful parts of this. This is not an easy thing for me to do. This is kind of laying my soul bare. Now, why is it I grew up with so much prejudice and bias and discrimination in my life? Well, I grew up in a small town in Arkansas, and I am Arkansas proud. Let me just say that right off the top. But I grew up with people who taught me these things, and it was instilled in me. I mean, it was just reinforced over and over. And then for the most part, I lived in an echo chamber of other people who thought the same thing. So I didn't know it was possible to think any other way. I was raised Christian. I cannot explain to you why my faith in God, my morality, and my racism took so long to cross paths. I can't explain it, but it probably took about 40 years to figure that out. There's a whole series of events in my life, I guess, ultimately that led up to this. And prison was probably one of the biggest catalysts, because when you're on 23-1 lockdown with someone of a different color from you in the same cell, you shut your mouth and you listen. You ask questions. And I had so many different cellmates from different countries, from different races and heritages. And it just really opened my mind. And sitting in prison, I had a lot of time to think. And I had some old timers tell me, I need to do my time. Don't let my time do me. And those are good words of advice. But I started digging deep into myself and my flaws, and because I was probably the biggest asshole I knew at that time, and I wasn't proud of that at all. And I knew I needed to change if I wanted to live a productive and healthy life and just be somebody likable. I just couldn't see the world for the way it really was. And that breaks my heart that it took me so long to see it. But the beauty that is born from this change in me, or this growth, is just crazy. God is amazing. At one time, I very much was the enemy. So I think it's important that you can see sometimes into the mindset of somebody like I was, so maybe that we can better understand it going forward. And again, these are just my experiences, my opinions, and my thoughts. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to know that I had prejudice and bias and discrimination and bigotry inside me. I knew this. Understanding that it was wrong and accepting that my character was flawed was way more difficult. People see what they want to see. I'm absolutely guilty of that. I only sought out information that further proved my ideology the way I thought, no matter how wrong it was. But I did this over and over, and it just further reinforced in my head that what I was reading and hearing was true. Accepting that you have a massive character flaw is not easy for anybody of any race or gender. It sucks, but you have to admit it. You have to confront that the way you think is harmful and hurtful, and it's not healthy, and it's not accurate of all things. So I realized the first step was admitting it. The second step was learning to forgive myself. White guilt and forgiveness. One of the most challenging things on this journey of trying to deconstruct my own racism is learning to forgive myself. That is a very difficult thing to do for most anybody, especially when it's a burden that you carry around so heavy that you don't know how to break it down. Again, these are my thoughts, my experiences, and my opinions only. And while I can't tell you how to learn to forgive yourself for something because it's different for everybody, it's absolutely crucial if you want to grow. I had to admit it to myself. I had to be accountable to myself. And then I had to put in the work. And that involves a lot of introspection, a lot of prayer. It's just something you can't take your foot off the gas of. You know what I mean? Forgiving myself doesn't absolve me of the things I've got to work out. Not by any stretch of the imagination. But until you forgive yourself, it's really hard to move forward. And the biggest thing I struggle with initially is what we call white guilt. And that looks different to probably everybody, because I was really concerned. I spent a lot of time thinking about it and praying about it, because if I did this out of some sort of guilt, it wouldn't be the same. It wouldn't be sincere. And I realized and came to the conclusion, once I had forgiven myself, that I had thrown that yoke off me. Now I'm just free to love. I'm just free to grow and be open-minded and experience all these new things with an open and transparent heart. Racism is not a switch you can flip on and off. It doesn't work that way. It's a long process. It takes a lot of commitment.
If you're really committed to being a racist in this country, you can't unsee what I'm about to show you.
You might want to start checking Amazons for blankets, because this gas furnace behind me, you don't get to have one of those either, because that was invented by a black woman named Alice Parker around 1920. She received a patent on it. Yeah, that's how we stay warm today. I mean, if you love potato chips, they got to go, because a man named George Crumb, a chef in New York, had sent French fries out with a meal and a customer complained. So what did Mr. Crumb do? He sliced potatoes so thin, fried them up, dumped a bunch of salt on them, and sent them out. And that is the American delight of potato chips. They got to go. Here in the bathroom, Lotta Newman patented the first hairbrush with synthetic bristles in 1898. And she's just the third Black American woman to ever receive a patent. Now, I know this isn't going to affect those skinheads very much. In 1892, George Sampson of Dayton, Ohio, received patent number 476,416 for what is the forerunner of the modern dryer we use today. It's going to suck dry on your clothes outside. In the late 1880s, Samuel Scottron of Pennsylvania patented the curtain rod. Ooh, let's go piss off some white girls. It's going to be really hard to plan racist rallies without a color monitor. Invented by Mark Dean, an engineer at IBM, he is also on 3 of the original 9 patents of the IBM PC that came out in 1981. Did you know in 1897, Albert Crowell in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, developed the mechanized ice cream scoop? You know, the click that separates the ice cream from the spoon, changing the way ice cream is served. And if you're racist and an ice cream lover, it's going to get worse. I told you it's going to get worse. Augustus Jackson, the father of ice cream, pioneered many of the methods we have today to enjoy ice cream, including the way we salt it. Another thing about being a racist, you're going to have to give up the freezer and frozen foods, because Frederick McKinley Jones of Ohio, who was orphaned at 9 years old with a 6th grade education, a young biracial boy, grew up to invent Thermo King, which is the reason why we have frozen foods that are shipped and stored in stores and our homes. You got to give up ice cream and frozen pieces? So if you still want to be a racist, there are some things you're going to need to purge from your life. If you would, just put it out on the curb. I'll send some trucks around to pick it up, and we'll go give it to real Americans who really need it. Do you see that little doohickey on the wall right there, the little white thing? That's called your thermostat.
That's how you control your AC. That was invented by David Crossway, who got his engineering degree right here in Indiana at Purdue University. He's so cold, he designed the heating system for Radio City Music Hall and Rockefeller Center. Sorry, racists, no AC this summer. This is really going to mess your shit up. The porcelain toilet as we know it was designed by Thomas Elkins in 1872. Hey, come here. How many races does it take to change a light bulb? None. They don't want to be enlightened. Which is too bad, because the carbon filament in the light bulb that we've grown up and used, that lights up really bright, was invented by Lewis Latimer, who's one of the chief engineers for Thomas Edison, and he helped design the telephone with Alexander Graham Bell. I mean, you can't even do something as simple as open the door, because that door handle was patented in 1878 by Osborne Dorsey. Yeah, sorry guys. I mean, I guess you probably were raised in a barn. And if you think you want to call all your buddies to come meet you at the laundromat so you can wash your white sheets together, because let's face it, if you're still a racist, you don't have a dryer, you don't have a gas furnace heater, you don't have a thermostat to control your AC, you can't open your doors without a doorknob, and you especially cannot call your buddies without the cell phone. You're going to have to get rid of these, like I said, because Henry Sampson, a black genius inventor, patented and invented the gamma ray process, which uses radio waves to transmit and receive audio signals, which is what makes cell phones able to communicate with each other, and changed all our lives significantly. Listen, in all seriousness, if you still really, really are committed to being a racist, it's getting hard in the yard out here for y'all, because I've now made you aware of some things that you didn't know. And this is just a tiny tip of the iceberg of all the ways people of color have improved our lives in measurable and quantifiable ways. Our world would not be nearly as far along as it has without the inventions and contributions of all these Americans. So, again, I hope that this opens your eyes a little bit to how much white and black culture are actually intertwined in a good and great positive way. Have a great evening.
Why do white people always get accused of being racist? Great question. When people say we're racist, they're often pointing to this. We live inside systems that were built by white people for white people. And most of us were never taught to see those systems, let alone challenge them. Racism isn't just slurs or hate. It's who gets hired, who gets stopped, who gets protected, and who doesn't. And we benefit from that structure, whether we intend to or not. So when we're accused of being racist, it's often not about personal hate. It's about unacknowledged patterns. It's about how silence, defensiveness, and our lack of awareness uphold harm. I'm not here to shame anyone. I'm doing this work too. But we won't get free by being offended. We get free by getting honest. I'm the anti-racist mum, and if you're ready to get free and unlearn this for yourself, your kids, and your community, click the link in my bio. I've got low-cost resources to help you get started. How did white people build the system that created racism? Great question. Let's break this down. Racism, as we know it today, is a construct. It didn't always exist in the way that we think of it now. It was developed to justify one thing: power. During European colonial expansion from the 15th century onward, white European powers needed an excuse to justify things like slavery, genocide, expansion, extraction, land theft, and exploitation. So they created a hierarchy: white at the top, everyone else below. This was then written into science, law, education, and obviously religion. It was then used to justify slavery, genocides, and the building of empires on stolen land. So that's what I mean when I say white people built the system. It doesn't mean that white people are responsible for what happened 400 years ago, but it does mean the system was built to benefit whiteness. And that benefit is still showing up strong in who gets access, who gets protected, and who gets punished. So if white people built the system, we white people certainly have a role to play in dismantling it. That's not blame, it's accountability and responsibility. I'm the anti-racist mum, and if you're ready to unlearn your social conditioning, hit the link in my bio for low-cost resources that will help you do just that. And keep following me for more uncomfortable truths.
Welcome back to the channel. Now, listening to what everybody has said, I believe you understand why people like George White have always told their fellow whites that you can fight racism. You can help join this team of anti-racism and speak good, because black people have made numerous contributions towards making America what it is today. Some white Americans have chosen to call out their fellow whites against racism as a moral and civic duty rooted in the belief that silence perpetuates systemic injustice. These individuals recognize that racism is not only sustained through overt acts of discrimination, but also through passive complicity. By challenging racist behaviors, language, and structures within their own communities, they seek to dismantle the normalization of racial inequality. This internal critique is often motivated by an awareness that racial justice cannot be achieved solely by those who suffer from racism. It requires the active participation of those who benefit from racial hierarchies. A central part of this movement involves acknowledging the reality of white privilege, a concept that highlights the unearned advantage white people receive simply because of their race. Activists and scholars like Tim Wise, particularly in their works such as White Like Me, have argued that white privilege operates invisibly for many white Americans, allowing them to deny or ignore the structural disadvantage imposed on black Americans. Wise contends that recognizing this privilege is not about guilt, but about responsibility, understanding how racial advantage contributes to disparities in education, wealth, and justice systems. By confronting privilege, white allies can begin to understand how deeply racism is woven into American institutions. This recognition also extends to how white privilege has historically impoverished black Americans. From slavery and Jim Crow to redlining and employment discrimination, systemic policies have extracted wealth and opportunity from black communities while enriching white ones. Scholars like George White, works such as Holding the Line, Race, Racism, and American Foreign Policy Towards Africa have demonstrated how these structures of inequality extend beyond domestic boundaries, linking United States racial politics to global systems of power. By acknowledging this legacy, white Americans calling out racism underscores that privilege is not an abstract moral condition, but a concrete economic and political system with real consequences. Moreover, these white critics often act out of recognition that racism damages not only people of color, but also the moral fabric and democratic ideals of the nation itself. By refusing to address racial inequality, white Americans risk perpetuating a society that is fundamentally unjust and unstable. Activists like Tim Wise argue that confronting racism is essential for creating a more authentic form of community, one that is not built on denial or domination, but on shared humanity. This vision reframes anti-racist actions not as charity, but as collective liberation, where everyone benefits from a more equitable society. Finally, the willingness of some white Americans to confront their peers reflect a growing awareness of the importance of accountability and education. They recognize that dismantling racism requires not only systemic change, but also cultural transformation within white spaces, churches, schools, workplaces, and families. Drawing from the educational approach of figures like Wise and the historical analysis of George White, these individuals use their platforms to challenge myths of racial innocence and national exceptionalism. In doing so, they model a form of allyship that is both self-critical and socially engaged, striving to replace the comfort of privilege with the courage of truth. That is what people like George White and Tim Wise have been doing. They are dismantling this wall of racism that has always been built between whites and blacks, so that blacks cannot access certain things that whites are allowed to access. And this is the mental segregation that continues to exist even today. We know that segregation ended years ago, but because of how policies have been developed, things like redlining and Jim Crow laws, they cannot intermingle freely because the generational and historical trauma that they get from this kind of policies still shape their mental capabilities and how they think about their abilities. And that is what I think black people need to come to realize, that when they get to engage directly with these whites and understand how history has shaped their current perception and realities, only then can they know what is the right thing they can do to address these issues to their finality. Share your thoughts down in the comment section, and if watching us for the first time, please remember to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and share. Thank you, and let's meet on the next one.